everybody. It's Dr. Sarah Gordon of the PhD Journey Unplugged podcast here back with you on episode 79. And I am really excited about today. Today, I'm spreading my wings a little bit on the podcast. Um, for the last year, a lot of my guests on the show have been from the multi-sport community. Such a blessing how the triathlon community embraced this podcast and helped me build this podcast. But we really looked at human performance from like a physical activity perspective. And I've had incredible people on the show who've done incredible athletic challenges across the world, and it's been amazing. But today, I want to branch out a little bit and talk about human performance, really from a different perspective. And having Scott, please, I probably should have done this before we start recording. Pronounce your last name so I say it correctly.
Well, of course, yeah, it's Proposki.
Proposki. Okay, I thought that was it, but I wanted to make
It's
sure.
perfect.
So I'm having Scott on the show today. And believe it or not, his background, we have something in common together, is photography, amongst other things that he's involved in. And so, welcome to the show, Scott.
Well, great to be here, Sarah. Great to be here.
Yeah, and so we're both on the East Coast. He's up in Massachusetts. I'm down in Delaware. Scott's got a great studio. I'm very envious.
Put it this way, being a photographer, it's all about lighting and make it look really amazing. But,
It's
so let's just
beautiful. I
call it
love
that. It's
it.
all about lighting.
And I love the purple tones, and it's just great. So anyhow, so Scott, I'm excited to have you on the show. First of all, like I said, because we share passion for photography. I was just explaining to him before we started to record. My grandfather was a photographer. My mom's a photographer. My brother's a photographer. I dabble a little bit in photography. Perhaps all of us now with our iPhones could maybe think that
Mhm.
we're photographers, but Scott is actually a professional photographer. And I'm going to introduce a little bit about your background, and then I wanted to kind of evolve in the conversation because I think that's really where the value in the story is, okay? And how you've really
Sounds great.
transformed your life. Okay. So Scott spent 27 years as an event photographer. He worked for National Geographic. We all know how impactful National Geographic is. So that really is an honor to have worked for National Geographic. So congratulations on having that career with them. And
Yeah, no,
also,
it's a little surreal looking back on it.
right? I know sometimes you can't
When you're
you
in the moment, it's
it's right. Sometimes you're just in the moment, you're just living. Then you think about the
mm-hmm,
journey.
mm-hmm.
That's what this
That's right.
podcast actually is really all about, the journey.
Yeah,
But it also looks like you photograph for the White House events.
that is true. That is true as well. Great stories there, let me tell you. Great stories.
So I'm excited to talk to you because like I said, this is a little bit different and it's going to be a different angle of how we talk about human flourishing and human performance. And we're going to learn from you, from your experiences. I always say on this podcast, our lives are not a straight path. If
Hmm.
you're lucky, I'll be honest with you, I don't think anybody's life is a straight path. You wouldn't even
You
learn
know,
that way.
my coach tells me, like, why would anybody wait in line for the roller coaster if it just stayed the same spots, right? Didn't go up and down, right? There's a big line because it's a big roller coaster, the big ups and downs. It gives it the energy. Oh my gosh, look at this. That's what he tells me, and I love the metaphor of it too. So
Yeah, but it's true. But so we have these curves in the road, and your story is very interesting. So let's just start here. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, just so we can get to know, so my audience can get to know you.
yeah, no, of course, no, it's great. So as I said just a few minutes ago, it's like, yeah, I'm listening to you, and I'm saying, wow, yeah, it does sound incredible, and it does sound incredible. And I'm sometimes call it imposter syndrome per se. But when you do something for 27 years, it becomes the norm. Psychologically, it's just the norm. It wasn't something like and I never had a really plan for it. It kind of just always multiplied and got bigger and bigger and bigger, which is another psychological reason of like, hey, I finally got here. Well, I didn't really have a plan. It happened, right? Um, so that's how my mindset works when somebody talks about all the events that I do. It's almost a matter of fact when I speak. Um,
Mhm.
and going back to the family, so my dad was a corporate photographer. My cousin was the vice president of Polaroid in Cambridge, Massachusetts. My other uncle Roger was a corporate photographer for AT&T. So I was just embedded into corporate photography. So I just plan B is plan A in my life, and that's actually how I got through a lot of my difficult times. Plan B is plan A, and that was simply the way it's going to be.
Mhm. It's called being
Amazing, right?
adaptable.
Yeah, right. When you go again, going through the minute of it, there was just no way, when you have an absolute that this is what you're going to do, quitting or stopping isn't it's just not an opportunity. It's just not an option, rather, right? Because I didn't even think about stopping or quitting or doing anything else. This was exactly what I was going to do, and that was it. And there's a big shift in that because I only learned that after the pandemic when I didn't have anything, right?
Well,
But
well,
there's a big difference to that, right?
let's start. Let's go back. Like, when did your I know you had these influences in your family for photography, but like, what did your earlier like 20s, 30s? I don't not sure how old you are, but what did those earlier years look like? Were you in
Well,
photography then?
no, I certainly was, right? Just like many stories you hear about, oh, I had a camera in my hand when I was a kid and I never put it down and I'm a photographer. I kind of read those bios a lot, right? I'm that bio, kind of had a camera. I had a Polaroid camera back in the 80s, right? And that was for fun. And then it kind of grew into digital. And then before you know it, I became the guy, the photographer, right? That's what I was known for. Scott the photographer. Um, but that quickly changed as well after I left the White House and did this amazing, and we'll go down that story about all these different events of how I got into National Geographic and the White House. But the story comes down to that the camera kept me focused, right? So would an individual, an entrepreneur that most likely has ADHD, including myself, the camera kept me very focused. So there was no other alternative. I had my camera, I'd get through the White House. I didn't care. It didn't matter. I had my camera. So when the business shifted and now I became a CEO business owner and growing to 7, 8 figures, that's where life kind of got complicated for me because
Mm,
now the camera and focus needed to be um, focused on the computer, focused in the office, right? Which
hmm
at the time I wasn't so analytically detailed into that sort of stuff till I got to really enjoy it. And once I enjoyed it, and I did get to enjoy it, then I became all in. And I see that a lot with a lot of athletes, right? Tom Brady, right? Him quitting or stopping the New England Patriots during peak is just not an option. It's just not an option. His whole entire life was, this is what he's going to do. That's it, right?
hmm
And it becomes that mindset.
Do you think when you grew so big, it took the joy out of it, of being a photographer?
Um, you're the first person to really kind of ask me that very directly. It did because, growing a business with 52 people, you have a lot more problems, a lot more complexity, a lot more things to worry about. Um, and, there's a lot of chaos when you get to a certain size level of business. I always tell,
Mhm.
my clients, a company doing $250,000 has a set of problems. And then the next plateau is, 500,000, a million, then it jumps over to 5 million, right? We're having these complexities. So I just had a lot of chaos and a lot of complexity.
Hmm
And it became really, it became chaos. It really did. It became chaos. Organized chaos in a way, but I see it now helping entrepreneurs now and business people that try and get to 2 and 3, $4 million because I'm like, I kind of been there before. I see it. I can see
hmm
myself in it. Right.
So you had this career with National Geographic and the White House, and then 2020 hit.
Mm.
Unless you want to spend more time before 2020, I kind of want to go to 2020 because I want to talk about that and then how you found your way out of 2020. And honestly, if I ask anything, it feels like too, you don't, I mean, that's my nature because I really think the more vulnerable we are on these platforms, the more we can really help people going through things in their own lives. That's what my platform's all about, like to never give up on yourself, to believe in yourself, and to understand how important our mental health, our physical health, and our social emotional health is. And that for a lot of us, we use different things to help us get through hard times and to overcome and to become like these new versions of ourselves that are more aligned with what we authentically want to do in our lives anyway. So I just, feel free to share as much as you want, but I know just reading a little bit about your background, like 2020 was a mass disruptor for actually it's when I went back to school to get my
Mm.
PhD. I was like, all right, we got a pandemic. Maybe I'll go back online and go to school. I'll be stuck in my
And it
room.
was brilliant. It was brilliant. It's a great
you
idea.
know, I can just do it online. Anyhow, so tell us like what you want us to know about Scott leading up to 2020 and then what happened in 2020.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that info, right? And you're right. Stories about National Geographic and the White House, those are great stories. There's about photography and getting into photography, it's great. But the real story here is getting through, as your audience and as professionals, as CEOs and founders of businesses and having issues and problems, is how did I go through the most difficult time in my life
Exactly.
of losing a big business that I grew my whole entire life and have it
Mhm.
collapse overnight, right? And that's really what the story is because there's so many people that are, and I talk to them on these podcasts, so many people that are, are really they're in a tough place, right? And it all goes down to the pandemic, pre-pandemic, post-pandemic. And there's just been a simple shift in that world, not just photography, not just in the world in general, right? And I
Mhm.
see more of it. And when I say that, it helped me get through it. And so, why I'm here is to tell my story. Same reason why I wrote my books. I was very vulnerable about my ADHD and what got me focused. The purpose was to help just one person. If I can
Mhm.
help one person to identify that ADHD is it's a good thing for the right person, right? That creative individual, if they can use
It's
it as
good.
gasoline, right? They can
Mhm.
use it as gasoline and go. And that's exactly what I did. And I inspired a lot of people when I wrote that book in 2019.
So how did you find yourself out of this moment in 2020? Was it a month that happened? Was it a day? Was it like what, how did it happen? And how'd you find yourself,
Yes.
how'd you take that step forward?
Yeah, so 2020, let's talk about the losses here, right? Having a business for 27 years, 25 years, I think at the time. February 2020, we had some really large contracts, right? We were talking to the NHL, we were talking, we had big scalable events, we had signed contracts with 10 locations and, a lot of business stuff, right? But it equaled a lot of business. And I was securing that business and potentially maybe sell it or collaborate or do something bigger, right? So that's, like a lot of founders and CEOs, they want to bring it, raise capital, sell it off, do something, right? And that's where my energy was, all that energy. So that's when the energy left. That dream, it almost collapsed.
Well,
So pandemic happened. I was 3, 4 years after the pandemic trying to get over my losses because
wow.
I was never going to get back there. I wasn't going to get back to that size business. I was at what I call ground zero to be in an event business, to do events with large amount of people, including the White House and the New England Patriots, the Super Bowls. That's the type of business I was involved in my photography. It was a marketing promotional company. It needed a large amount of people. Well, that wasn't happening. And so employees, team members left, contracts obviously fell apart. And after 3 years, I had to have a conversation with myself. Scott, we got to sit down. We have to have a conversation. Like this isn't going back to. It's never going to go back, right? We're going to have to go forward. We're going to have to go forward.
So you know what, Scott, you know what you just described? An identity shift.
Oh, 100%.
You
Didn't
know,
realize it at the time, but now I
right.
do.
And a lot of times we don't realize it.
Mm,
But when we allow ourselves the grace to grow and to evolve, our lives don't have to be, it's actually a recipe for successful aging. Our lives don't have to be defined by one identity. Now,
mm,
when everything is wrapped into the identity, it's hard. It's hard to let it go and to create, a new life for yourself. But that your story is about, for at least for on this show, is about your identity, this finding your path forward, this new identity. I mean, photography is a thread throughout your life because you love photography. And now you had your career as a photographer, and now you're out there helping other people be successful as photographers based on your life experiences. For some of us, when we're tested in these ways, I had a gentleman on my show, Scott Lackey. He wrote a book called Wake Up to Die Again. I highly recommend that book. He had these moments in his life called lightning strike moments.
Mm.
But what these moments give us is they give us depth to help other people. I know it didn't feel like a blessing when it was happening, but if you
No.
kind of look at your life now, I mean, let me ask you this. Would you really have changed the trajectory of your life given where you are right now?
Um, no, actually, I think I'm
No?
actually ahead of what I've actually planned. Um, Believe it or not. And it took me a while to realize that. I was in an executive coaching program with Dan Sullivan about a decade ago, years ago. And one of the very first things we did was it was to actually write down, many different versions of this, right? And it depends if people actually did it and save it. For the few things I actually follow through with at the time was this one thing. And it was like, write life as it is in the year ahead and speak as it already happened and write it in the notebook. And then we went to 5 years and 10 years, 25-year plan, right? And write it down as if it already happened. And I did that. And I drank the Kool-Aid. For some reason, I was really into this in the notebook and the journal. And that's all we did. That was our workshop. And it was an amazing workshop when I left. And I'm like, what am I going to do with this? I don't know, but I'm going to save this notebook. Well, that
Mhm.
was a decade ago. And it wasn't that long ago. I pulled out my journal. I was flipping through it. And I noticed my 25-year plan, I was going to write 3 books, publish them, and I was going to be a consultant. Well, I published the 3 books and called coaching consultant. I am consultant. I'm 15 years ahead of myself.
How does that make you feel? Given
It's an
you,
aha moment.
I mean,
It's an
given the
aha moment.
hardship, I mean, given the loss to know where you are right now, how does that feel?
No, I mean, that's what keeps me going, right?
Yeah.
It's searching for those answers. And the people that are searching for the answers, that's what I want to hear when I'm helping somebody, right? I don't want to tell them the answer per se, but I want to lead them to it. And I had a lot of great coaches and leaders that got me to right from a decade ago. Why did my first coach tell me to do that, right? And it led me to something bigger and better, a better future. And I didn't know it at the time how impactful that was going to be.
I'm curious listening to you. What was it within you that, like, why didn't you give up? Like in those 2 to 3 years where you were searching,
Four years, 5 years.
where did you find that strength
um,
or vision for yourself?
you know, I was telling my sister this just this morning about something. I was telling her I was going to be on this podcast, right? And she's, it's a remarkable story here. Anyways, um, Plan B is Plan A,
You
and
said
just
that before
like
we started or at the beginning. Plan B is plan A. What does that
yeah,
mean?
my original plan was to start a photography business and scale it, and have my own business. And I'm passionate about this and stick with the one thing. And it
So
might be a different version of what I had pre-pandemic, right? But honestly, it's actually have more opportunities today than I did pre-pandemic.
hmm, life's interesting, right? That's why I call this the PhD journey because life is a journey. I learned a lot of lessons on my PhD journey about life.
Yeah, I think that's incredible. I would definitely do that if I if I could go back in time. Been through a lot, but your idea of going back to college to do that, go back to school and educate was just a great idea.
Thank
Great
you.
idea.
I mean, at 53, I took a leap of faith. Same time
Mm,
frame as you, August 2020.
yeah, I
Decided,
was going to go back to law school actually. I was going to do law school and really strongly looked at it, but I'm 58, so you know, time, effort equals. So I said, well, a consultant's almost like an attorney, almost some ways, right? So according to ChatGPT and Claude, they said, Scott, why don't you just stay with what you're doing? So,
well, there's something I talk about a lot on my show. My podcast is grounded in a theoretical framework called self-determination theory. And a lot of us don't realize that we are self-determined individuals
Mm,
because we're not necessarily studying the theoretical framework like I am as a researcher and as a practitioner. I was just overseas at a conference with, the whole conference was about self-determination theory. And basically what it says, and I think will help, it helps people understand their lives because and there's lots of theoretical frameworks out there to study, but this one's about human flourishing and human thriving. And it says we have three basic psychological needs of autonomy, competence, and relatedness. So autonomy is where we take actions from within. We move our life. You got yourself out of that transition, that hard transition, from 2020 to
mm,
2024, or 2023, however many years it took to then, you know, have a
get
new
back.
vision
Mhm.
for your
Yeah,
life with photography.
100%.
Okay,
And
that's
that's exactly
autonomy.
what you need. No, yep,
The
100%.
competence aspect of it is that you're a photographer. You know photography. You have the competencies to then go help other people. And relatedness teaches us that we're not, humans are not meant to live in isolation. We're meant to have human connection.
Mm, yeah,
And
right.
so we look for communities. You're building your community amongst photographers. So
Hmm.
when we are able to have these basic psychological needs met, and it's a continuum, we're never like, it's not, life is not static. We're living, breathing, dynamic organisms. It's always a process. We could be highly autonomous in one area and not so much in another area. But as we try to move in the direction to meet these basic psychological needs, we become more intrinsically motivated. And with intrinsic motivation, ultimately, we can find more enjoyment, more alignment, more quality of life, all these positive things that help us flourish as individuals. So that's kind of what you did for yourself. You probably didn't think, oh, I think I'm going to put self-determination theory in motion
Yeah.
here. But you did it. And it's a great framework to understand it all.
Yeah, it took a lot. I mean, I'm not going to kid. It took a lot. It was about losing that vision for,
Mhm.
especially for an entrepreneur and creative individual, in my opinion, is they need big vision. The visionary people, right? Here's the vision. Here's where we're going to go. The big, as I help people in my coaching consultant firm is like, okay, where are we now? Where do we want to go? Right. And those are the first two questions I kind of ask people. Where are we? Where do we need to go? Um, and when somebody says, I don't know where I'm going, oh, okay, we got to back up a little bit and have a conversation. Because that's it. How can I help you get you where you want to go if we don't know where we want to go? Right.
Right. I mean, you can help them, but ultimately they have to want to create it for themselves. Because when you do something for somebody else, they're not necessarily learning, like they're going to stay in
No.
it long term. They're going
Mhm.
to have more um, commitment to it if they feel like it's something that they're doing, that they're taking the action to do it for their lives.
Yeah. Man, I can see that throughout the different clients that I have, right? Everybody's different, and that's cool. It's great. But you can identify where people are at just based on looking back at the past performance, which is, again, totally fine. Some people want to build a $5 million company. Some people want to build a $250,000 business. I'm pro for both, honestly, right? So all good. But it's really interesting. But you need to have that drive exactly where you want to go.
Hmm.
Um, and yeah.
I'm
It,
curious.
it, it, it
Go
kind
ahead.
of, sorry, it just brought me to a story. Went back to my coach back a decade
No,
ago,
go
Dan
ahead.
Sullivan.
Share.
And again, I had a lot of reflection back in those days. I really enjoyed Dan. Those conversations I had with him quite a bit. I wrote about him in my book called Camera Focus. Dan Sullivan's just an amazing business coach, one of the biggest business coaches out there, in my opinion. Um, and I kind of shared a story with him, and it kind of made sense about I was stuck. I was actually went hiking up in New Hampshire, and I got stuck on the summit in 6 feet of snow. As when I went to hike the trail, there was no snow, but when I got to the summit, there was just a bunch of snow. It was like up to my waist, and I got no snowshoes. And I'm really stuck. It's like, oh my gosh, this it was getting panicky. I was like, oh my gosh, by myself, 4:30 in the afternoon. It's getting dark. It's getting a little cold. It's just me and my dog Chip. And I kind of trekked down the bottom of the summit, and now I'm further into snow. I can't go back the other way. And I kind of was a moment of giving up. Like I dropped my water bottle. I'm like, oh my God. Like the one thing is this is saying to myself, this is just tumbling. Now I knew enough not to eat the snow because that won't hypothermia will kick in and not to do that. And all these things are going through your mind. Now they're racing because now panic is stricken it. Panic is stricken it. And I know this is the moment. And I'm like, okay, let's bring it down. Let's take it slow. Because I was looking at the horizon and getting through the hike and I was starting to panic. Look at the horizon. I'm starting to panic. And guess what? I can see the horizon, but I'm never going to get there. I'm simply not going to get there. And the panic started continuing to come in, continue to come in, come in, come in, come in, come in. Talked myself out of it and said, okay, I knew the hike. I said, hey, listen, Scott, we're just going to get to the next. There was a big rock and a trailhead sign. I knew where it was. It was a little distance. I knew that's all I was going to focus on. I wasn't going to focus on anything else. I was just going to focus on getting to that one point in the trail. I got there. Once I got there, I knew that the next turn was the big turn, the next point in the trail I needed to get to. I just focused on that. I got there, and then from there was a straight shoot back to the truck. And it took me a while to get down that trail, and Chippy was with me in my chocolate lab, and I finally got to the truck, and I realized what had just happened, what I just did, and it kind of broke it down. I didn't look into the future so far that it just became unachievable. But if I broke it down, I actually could control my mind and actually get to the next trailhead, get to the next marker, and eventually get out of the trail safe and happy and go home and celebrate with a drink and a nice steak dinner. And that was the reward, right? And so that happened a decade ago. And I use that story to tell other people as I'm speaking to them about breaking things down and not looking so much into the horizon. And we have to just break things down. And those are some of the stories that shaped me to get through some of these difficult times. Because it was many times where it was like, why even bother? Why bother? As I told my psychologist one day, why bother? Why bother going back to work? It seemed unachievable. So then I had to remind myself of the same stories of making chunking things down. And so you brought me back right now to that story about seeing the horizon, panicking and stepping back and taking one step at a time.
I love that you just shared that story. Let me tell you why. Yesterday morning at breakfast with my brother, and I've shared with you, offline about my brother and wanting to connect the two of you because he's a photographer. I just shared with my brother and my sister-in-law, we were talking about my PhD journey and just about like some goals that I have for myself moving forward. And I just said, I couldn't get through a doctoral program thinking about the entire doctoral program. It was at a time in
Mhm.
my life. I was a full-time caregiver. There was so much stuff going on in life. I was like, I literally had a sheet where I just one, like you just said, get to one step at a time, get through to one next level at a time. And I just said this yesterday morning. It's incredible that you just gave that example because whatever you're going through in your life, there's no way for Scott and I to know who's listening, where in the world you're listening, what you have going on in your life. But if you feel overwhelmed today, what Scott just shared with you is just such an amazing strategy to be successful in your endeavors, is to break things down into smaller steps. Because when you think about, there's an old expression, and it's kind of silly, but it's like you can't eat the whole elephant at once. Nobody's going to eat an elephant, but you gotta break things down into smaller steps to accomplish these goals. I just had Adina O'Neill on my podcast. It just launched episode 78, the episode before Scott. This will launch as 79. Adina O'Neill, she has a connection with you. She's up in
Boston, yeah.
Massachusetts.
Great
Yes.
swimmer. I heard the podcast. Great
She
swimmer.
just swam backstroke across, and
Mm.
I'm still happy for her, and I hope you don't mind me bringing it into our conversation, but I'll
No,
tell
I
you
just I just listened
why.
to the
It was
podcast yesterday.
it was amazing, and she
Yeah,
swam backstroke
absolutely.
across the Boston
Mhm.
Harbor, 8 miles, first person to have ever done it. It's in the history books
Mhm.
until who knows? Somebody, yeah, it doesn't matter. She did it. She's the first one to do it. She did it. It was hard. It took a lot of training. And she just said on my podcast, she said, I said, well, how did you do it? You can't see where you're going. She's swimming
Mhm.
around boats. They didn't shut down the harbor for her. You know?
Right.
She said I went one step at a time. I can't remember what she
Yeah.
called them, but they're like buoys. I went from one
Mhm.
to the next, to the next, to the next. And that's really a strategy for success. So I'm so glad you shared that story because it's just absolutely the truth on how to get through big things. And
Yeah, and and I kind of 10 times that thought process in helping people with profit today in their business. Because if we can just get better at your business just 1% every day for the next year, we're going to improve 360%. So let's work together. Let's improve just 1% today,
Mhm.
1%, and we can get there. And that's my whole theory of my program is just small changes, incremental changes, and about compound interest, about using that same metaphor in business and life, just one step, 1%.
The lessons that you teach, because mostly the people that come to you are photographers, but aren't these
They
lessons for kind of all of us?
yeah, they are. I mean, I have the credibility crunch to it. So, obviously I'm happy to it. But I also I live both lives, right? Because I ran a business as well as photography. So I see the photography side and the business side. So I mean, I'll help, plumbers, electrician, the baker, the butcher, the candlestick maker kind of guys, right? They all have the same problem. They're at seven, $800,000. They all want to get to $1 million. Well, I can help you get to $1 million, no problem, because once they get to $1 million, they're going to have a whole nother set of problems. And once we get there, I'd be like, absolutely, I can bring you to $5 million. Absolutely, we can do that. Let's do that in one, So it's like, and I say that jokingly because we all think that once we get to the $1 million, life's going to be great. And I've been there. I know. I'll help you get there, but just let you understand that you and I are going to be around for together for a long time, which is totally fine because we're going to get you to 5 million.
Okay, I'm going to say something and because I want to challenge, like I want to see what you say to this. So when I was overseas at this conference for self-determination theory, there were the conversations, the presentations came at from many different angles, from healthcare, mental health, wellness, sports, K through 12 education, higher education, governing, policy, philosophy. And I sat in this one conversation where they were talking about wealth and self-determination theory. And they supposedly, I haven't done too much reading about the research, but there's like a threshold where beyond a certain number, it really doesn't necessarily increase your happiness.
Yes, I mean I've experienced the same thing. Heard the same stories, different versions of it, right? But just living it, knowing it. I mean, when I had my business and I got to $1 million, I'm like, hey, I got to $1 million. And then I kind of sat down in my kitchen. I was looking out the window. It was very clear. I remember exactly the day it happened. And I'm like, all right, now what? Like, same problems.
Right.
It didn't do much.
Interesting,
It was all the
right?
same issues.
It's
Yeah, it was
interesting.
very interesting. It was very interesting. It was something that I got from reflecting for 4 years, looking back of different,
Hmm.
milestones in my life and things that struck out at me. And I remember that moment in time, looking out the window, going, and kind of
Mm.
like that, and not, I didn't know the answer. You don't know what you don't know, but I do remember that moment in time that said, okay, and right. Um, and which brings me to helping other people where I'm like, hey, listen, the $5 million business, 10, whatever you got, it doesn't need to be there, right? Because I'd like to show you that you can do a $250,000 business and make more profit than doing $1 million business. So let's see where do we really want to go? Because I can show you that path too if you want to make a lot more money in a lot less time.
Are you familiar with David Brooks, the author? He wrote a book
Hmm.
several years ago, and can't remember the exact title, but it's about we have different mountains that we climb in our lives.
Okay.
Okay, sometimes we're climbing the achievement mountain, and then you kind of get to the top of the achievement mountain, and you have that moment like, okay, what, now what? And then you kind of can form these new identities where you climb these mountains that are just like more about
Sounds like mountains are really big on this podcast today.
giving back. Well, it's interesting. They are because I gave the commencement address at graduation, and there's a book. Oh gosh, I wish I could remember at the moment, but it is all about climbing mountains. And in fact, one
Hmm.
of my classmates, I mentioned her in the commencement address. She wrote a piece about climbing the mountains, about The people that are in front of you, they help you. The people that
Mm,
walk beside you, alongside you, and the people that are not quite as far up the mountain as you, and how you can extend your hand back and help those people
mm,
up the mountain. So there is a lot of metaphor. And then you just gave your
mm.
example.
Yeah.
There's a lot of
Yeah.
metaphors we can find in climbing
Mm.
mountains, you
I
know?
agree. I agree.
It's great. It's a great thing. And we know the higher you go up on a mountain, the oxygen gets thinner and it gets harder. So anyhow, that's a whole nother conversation. I can go down a
Hmm. I'm
philosophical
with you.
conversation
Yeah,
with you.
I'm with you. You need a team to get to the summit. I just think I'm with you.
Okay, so let me ask you this question.
Hey, did
I'm
I answer
cu-
that correct? Did I answer that question the way you thought I was going to answer the question?
I don't know. There's no right or wrong.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
I find you
Yeah.
very fascinating and interesting. I really love how you took this moment and just had a vision on how to like kind of continue to do something that you love to do, but kind of like reshape it. And I think it's great.
Transform.
Yeah, I
Mm.
think it's great. I think it's a great story of success, actually. And also, I would say, the key to success is adaptability and being flexible. Like, we have to allow ourselves to kind of transform throughout the lifespan, because our bodies are
Yeah.
changing physiologically,
Yeah.
everything's
Which,
changing.
again, you just brought me back to another moment talking about
Sure.
photography and transformation and ending. A lot of photographers I talk to, people in general, we're all getting affected by AI, good and bad.
Oh
Depends upon where you
yeah.
live, where you're at on it, right? So a lot of people say, "Oh, photography, AI. Oh man, I'm sorry about the business." What are you talking about? It's bigger now than it's ever been. I'm a big promoter of that. That AI for photographers is like gasoline if you can transform into the right way, right?
Hmm.
So photography is not ending. Things don't end. Things transform. My
Yeah.
business didn't end. My life didn't end. It just transformed. And the same thing. It's the same mindset that I didn't give up. I'm like, oh, AI is going to take over photography. Never saw it that way because I see things differently. And I definitely seen an improvement in a lot of people's businesses because of AI. And that's a big proponent of my program, helping photographers embrace AI, use it as gasoline.
Here's a question. What would Ansel Adams think today?
Well, he did his own kind of AI, if you think about it, right? I always thought about this, right? So there was a time when news photographers couldn't alter a photo, right? There was a magazine out with O.J. Simpson, and Newsweek ran his headshot, right, on their magazine, and Time Inc. ran his headshot on the magazine. It was the same image of the headshot. It just when one portrayed OJ with like almost like a black and white image and really dark shadows, and the other one was the actual image of a colored photo, his mugshot, And it was like it really stirred up a lot of controversy based on at that time altered photographs and images
Mhm.
and how you portray people in the news, right? And that was a no-no, right? Altering an image. They altered an image, and it changed the credibility of the business and the company. And going back to Ansel Adams, my dad being a photographer, he had conversations with him. He was supposed to be at a lecture and a conference about it. So I was really into that time. But he was using dodge and burning and using techniques to alter the photo that he took. So he
Mhm.
did. That was his way of altering a photo, just
Mhm.
like we're doing it with AI. It really hasn't changed. It just
Yeah.
transformed in a different way of doing it.
I had this conversation with my brother about AI, and it's all about process, right? It's creativity and process. So, the purists, the dark room, black and white purists, um, if they didn't necessarily evolve to digital, well, let me say it to you this way. Let me parallel it to science because I have a great book on my bookshelf called the Philosophy of Scientific Knowledge. And it says like, the business of science goes on day in and day out. But then we have these like mass disruptors that change the way we see the world and how we understand the
Mhm.
world. And if you don't necessarily evolve, you're kind of left behind. Like as
Yeah,
a,
you're dead.
research. What?
You're dead.
Right? And we don't
You're
necessarily know
done.
their
I mean, you're
names.
done. Yeah, right. You're done. Right. I mean, that's
So
it.
we have to evolve. AI is a tool. It's not we're not going back. Now we can still enjoy going into the dark room, and for,
Yeah,
and developing. It's kind of fun, but we're not going to go back. So we have to learn to adapt,
agreed.
So
Agreed.
yeah, that's interesting. I enjoy the photography conversation because, listen, my brother went to Rochester Institute of Technology. He just visited the school recently, and all the
Mm,
equipment, because he got his degree in printing there, is obsolete. It's all gone.
yeah, yeah, right. Um, Again, you brought me back into
So
a
much
key moment.
change.
You,
Yeah,
you,
sure.
these little things that you throw out at me, and it's like, I got a story for that.
Well, I want to hear
Um,
your story.
in 2019, when I was writing my book, Camera Focus, it was all about a metaphor around a camera and ADHD and what kept your focus, right? So it was a metaphor used in different parts of the camera. So it was late one night. I was writing the book. I was writing a chapter, and I was on LinkedIn, and I was doing some research, and I found the CEO of Kodak. So I sent him a message about 1 in the morning. He got back to me.
Wow.
I sent him a message saying, who I was. I was writing a book. I was wondering if you had a moment to talk to me. And he called me back. Well, he sent me a message back, right? It was 1 in the morning. He did not call me. He sent me a message back. And he said, yeah, absolutely. I'll have my assistant reach out to you in the morning and schedule a call. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's great, right? So, first thing in the morning, scheduled call. I had that call that afternoon. And we had a 30-minute conversation scheduled that went an hour and a half, right? You can tell how probably that would happen just if you listen to this whole podcast right now. And he ended up giving me an endorsement in my book called Camera Focus. And we just had a really intriguing conversation um, about the Kodak moment. And it was really intriguing that I was able to get to have that conversation with him at that time. So it's very intriguing.
Yeah, and sadly, I mean, I don't know, where's Kodak today with all the
Well, actually,
change?
they evolved. Actually, they were evolving, and they're in size wise they're different, but they're in a different technology. They transformed it to something else where they were
Yeah,
doing a lot of scanning technology, and so they do exist, not in the capacity we once knew. Same
right.
thing with me. I'm not doing it the same capacity as I once was, but they transform into something else smaller. Um, and I'm okay with that. Just like me, I live what I call a lifestyle business today, and I'm totally cool with that. That's what I want.
It's interesting. Very interesting. I want to ask you a quick question about physical activity real quick, because if you were climbing mountains, you keep yourself physically fit? Is it a part of
Hey,
your
do I
life?
look 58? I'm trying.
You don't look 58. But I'm just curious because my degree is leadership and health and human performance. I am
Mhm.
very,
Yeah, yeah, sure.
as you went through all of this, was physical activity part of your life?
Oh no, absolutely. It was those hikes in New Hampshire when I had a second home up there. I probably got more from those hikes and thinking than I did during the pandemic. And I didn't go anywhere, um, which was a big mind shift as well, right? So when I was doing trails and there was nobody there, right? The pandemic happened. There was so many people showed up. I didn't want to go, honestly, right? I could have went, but I didn't want to go. There was too many people going on the trails. So I stopped going. Literally, that's why I stopped going. Um, and so I gained about over 50 pounds actually during the pandemic and not going anything. And about a year or two ago, I kind of lost it quickly. I got back walking, and I walk my dog every day at just about 2:30. And so when this podcast was about on, he was like, "Give me a whack." He's an amazing dog. Every day, 2:30 gives me. He tells me, he keeps me going. So every day we go for about a mile and a half walk every single day. At the very least, or very least, snow, rain, sleet, we're going. He has. There's no negotiation. We are going for that W because I can't say the whole full word because he's in the room. So it's called the W.
Well, we talk about a lot on my show about consistency. It's not very glamorous. It doesn't even cost a lot. It just works.
Yeah, yeah, and hey, listen, a guy that has ADHD, but I know how to manage it because I know what my points are where ding, antennas go up, and consistency is a big thing, right, for a lot of people too, and not just ADHD, but definitely for me. So that little black lab dog keeps me on schedule. It keeps me on schedule and on point. I know that it's 2:30. I know that it's 6:57 every morning, right? I know, it's just so. Having a dog in working from home, there's a lot of science to it, I'm sure, so forth and so on. But he keeps me very consistent and keeps me checked during the time. Otherwise, I could sit down and write a book or be involved in something for 2 days and maybe not even move out of this desk, honestly,
Hmm.
right?
I hear
Because I
you.
get so focused and so
Focus.
zoned in. I really do. So there's a lot to be said about that. So he gets me to move, he gets me to exercise, he gets me to do those things, and there's no doubt about it that I'm probably a better person for myself because of that. Because I am moving, trying. I'm not running marathons or swimming the Boston Harbor, but I am doing a couple of laps in the neighborhood.
It's all,
So
listen, it has to fit your lifestyle. It's all good. It's just about keeping it
yeah,
going, keep moving. I
no,
want to ask
it's
you,
very true,
I want to ask you two
very
quick
true.
things and then we'll wrap up because you got to go walk your
Yeah.
dog. Tell us about the book behind you, The Second Shot.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. So Second Shot. So it's one of my third books I wrote called The Second Shot. And it's not on Amazon as of yet. I'm not quite sure if I'm going to do an Amazon on this particular book because nobody makes money on Amazon. It's not about the money, right? But the reason why is this has a lot to do with my first book, Camera Focus, which is on Amazon. Having a business, a lot of business lessons, lessons learned, lessons me in the White House, and having a shoot in at the White House, and when I'm with President Obama and being under lockdown, and but I had a camera,
Oh.
so I'm super focused. That's a teaser right there. That's what you call a teaser, right? Things like that. So it has a lot of great stories, and so I share these great stories in the second shot to let people know that a lot of people right now, because I went through it, are at the age 55, between the ages of 52 and 65 years old, where they might be going through a transition, identity shift. I'll call it identity shift, right?
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
I call it that second shot. This is something that I learned during my most difficult times was what was my second shot, and I didn't know what that was. So the second shot is for anybody that's corporate America. I say corporate America. There's anybody around the world, but in a corporate career for maybe 2 decades, 3 decades, and they've been structured that way for so long. But their ultimate dream was to have a business of their own. And maybe they were a creative individual. Maybe they were a weekend photographer. Maybe they were a wedding photographer. Maybe they just take great photographs, and people always told them they should probably do something with this. I never thought they could do it. Well, I'm here to say, take a second shot and because you did 2, 3 decades in a career, uh, do it now and take the second shot.
My instinct, it's like my instinct was, Scott's a little bit outside of like, what I really talk about, with the guests. But my instinct was that it's a very similar story, even within your journey, it's very similar human experience. It is about identity shift. It's about transformation. It's about being open to learning. It's about believing in yourself. It's so many things that whether you're on an Ironman journey or you're a photographer or whatever journey you're on in your life, it's really all about human flourishing and thriving and how you can find enjoyment in that journey forward. So I thank you so much for sharing all this. And
Mm,
I ask all my guests this one question, and I'm really excited to ask you because it's going to come from a totally different perspective. And
I'm on the
there's
hot seat.
there's no right or wrong answer. And you can answer it literally, you can come up with metaphors, you can figuratively, however you want to answer it. It's fun for our audience to hear how my guests answer it, and it especially will be interesting from just a whole different perspective. Okay, so you ready, Scott?
I'm sitting down. I'm sitting down.
He's like, what did I get myself into today? Okay, Scott, what are we training for?
What are we training for? Hmm, interesting question. We are training for the ability just to be able to stay in shape enough to be able to travel, to do things. And I got some weights in my office, and I try to do a little bit of weights. I'm not a weightlifter, but I tell my friends, I'm like, I just got to make sure that I can lift my luggage above the seats in the plane, so I can put my luggage in there, so I can travel longer in my lifetime. So that's what I'm training for. Be able to move my luggage, to put it in the airplane, so I can travel when I want to travel, and I don't need somebody else to pick up my luggage to put it in there. And I tell you that that is the truth, and I really do that.
That's awesome. Training for to enjoy life.
pretty much. Yep.
Yeah,
That's why I take that 1 mile walk every day with Willie. It's just that movement. It's the movement. And I learned a lot of that during the pandemic where I wasn't moving at all.
mhm.
And for many health reasons, mind-wise, physical, we just need small movements, right? Small movements. It says I don't have to walk a marathon. I can walk 2 laps around my neighborhood and be really feel accomplished, right?
Absolutely. I want to give you the final word. Anything you'd like to say to my audience today about all the lessons that you learned? I would really, I was kind of intentional. I would love to hear all your stories from being with National Geographic and in the White House. I'm sure you have so many, you have a treasure trove of interesting stories, good stories, the whole, it's like it's photojournalism, to a certain
Yeah,
extent.
yeah,
It's a
yeah.
history.
Hmm.
So I don't know.
Yeah.
But I really wanted to talk about your path from like this, transformation in your life. But I do have an interest about all your photography stories.
Yeah,
Uh,
no, it goes. It's. I
it's
give you a
a
couple of teasers. It goes from Michael Jackson to Billy Ray Cyrus to Miley Cyrus to President Obama. So
you're a fascinating human being. What would you like to say to my audience in terms of lessons learned based on what you've gone through and where you are today?
one small change every day. One small change. If you're in a bad spot's different for everybody. Whatever that spot is, just one change. One small change a day. There's got to be one small change that happens in a day. Look for it.
Look for it. It's a little easier said than done, but just have faith in yourself, believe in yourself. You
Some days it's just a matter of I had a good cup of coffee.
can.
Gotta find it. It's there.
Okay. Okay, well, I kept you a little bit longer, but I hope that was okay. But I just really enjoyed our conversation. I enjoy learning from you. I'm sure my audience is going to really enjoy this conversation as well. And
Great, great.
it was a pleasure
Thanks
to
for
meet
letting me
you.
share. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you for being on the PhD Journey Unplugged podcast, and I wish you all the best as you continue to move forward and to spread your knowledge and your wisdom out in the world.
Yeah.
All right. Bye, everybody.